Testing. There we go. They are. That's causing a few minutes delay. There we go. There we go. Oh, 5-4. I have to wait. Here we are. Well, good evening. This is unbelievable. This is just, it makes me feel so great to be a part of this. My name is Julia Hill Nichols. I'm the president for the League of Women Voters of Lower Cape Fear. On behalf of the League, I am pleased to welcome you to tonight's Oak Island Municipal Candidates Forum, which is obviously, this isn't in the script, which is being held at the Oak Island Town offices. I think everybody knows where they are. This event is sponsored by the League of Women Voters, and to moderate the forum, we brought in John Evans with WECT right behind me. We're so fortunate to have John here. We are excited to bring together candidates and community members for what promises to be an important and informative discussion. We deeply appreciate the willingness of the candidates to participate in tonight's forum, as well as the community members, you, to learn more about those seeking to serve as mayor or on town council and their perspectives on governance issues facing your community. If you're not familiar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization committed to voter education and helping to ensure a well-informed electorate. The League does not endorse any candidate or political party. Tonight's forum is designed to provide the public with an opportunity to hear directly from town council candidates regarding significant community issues, with an emphasis on fairness and equal opportunity for all candidates to share their views. Our established protocol ensures that every candidate receives a range of questions and equal time to respond. All questions are reviewed in advance for appropriateness and fairness. Both candidates and members of the public were invited to submit questions ahead of time. Before introducing our moderator, I'd like to review several ground rules for audience members. One is, and just a reminder that we are streaming this for the greater community of folks that can't be here, and this will eventually go on to the town's YouTube site so that you can go back and, if you have a need to hear that presentation again, you can do so. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so. And as John talked about, please refrain from applauding or otherwise demonstrating support or opposition to any candidate during the forum. Your job tonight is to listen. Your job is to listen and go home and think about what is best for your town. That's your job. And so that's what we want to be able to focus on. We will definitely ask for a major level of applause at the end, because running for these positions is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. And that commitment is just so important that we do, in fact, recognize. As for how the forum will be conducted, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statements. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to respond to questions. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 3 minutes for a closing statement to share their vision for governing Oak Island. All responses will be timed by members of the league. You'll see a time clock right over there. And with the timer visible to the candidates as well. So at this time, and I know everybody knows him, but we have to do the spiel. I would like to introduce our moderator, John Evans from WECT. He's been quite busy. John is an award-winning journalist and podcast host who serves as assistant news director and anchor at WECT. With over 4 decades in broadcasting, John brings deep expertise in political coverage, public affairs, and community storytelling. He anchors WECT's evening newscast and produces the acclaimed podcast One-on-One with John Evans, featuring in-depth conversations with notable figures across our region. John began his career in New Bern, North Carolina, and later held leadership roles at WWAY, News Channel 3, before joining WECT in 2008. Beyond the newsroom, he is actively involved in civic and health organizations, including the American Cancer Society, the Red Cross, and the Purple Heart Foundation of North Carolina. His work reflects commitment to public service, journalistic integrity, and elevating voices across the Cape Fear region. Please welcome John Evans.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's always great to come down here to Oak Island. The turnout is always fantastic for these events. It really shows to me, once again, that this community is excited about elections, wants to be educated when they cast their vote. And as I said before we got started today, it takes an awful lot to sign on the dotted line and run. A lot of people whine, a lot of people complain, but to sign on the dotted line and run for office takes guts. Before we get started, let's give our 2 candidates a round of applause, Christopher Brown and Liz White. One of the 3 mayoral candidates, Douglas Diaros, did not respond. He is not joining us. He will be on the ballot, though, when you vote in this year's elections. Once again, candidates, you see the time in front of you in big, bold numbers. If you have been at debates and forums with me in the past, you know if you're still going at the 2-minute mark or at the 90-second mark, I'm not going to cut you off at 91 seconds, but I'm not going to let you start another line of thought and go any further past that, okay? I want to give you every opportunity you can to finish whatever sentence you're doing. We're going to go alphabetically for the opening statements. Once again, you each have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, say why you are running for mayor in 2025 in Oak Island. First, we will go to candidate Christopher Brown. Mr. Brown, 2 minutes, sir.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Brown. And again, as he said, I'm running for mayor. A little bit about myself. I am a retired educator. I taught science. I was a biology chemistry teacher, followed by assistant principal, a federal and state testing and data liaison, and finally an assistant superintendent for human resources. In a school district of 10,000 students, 1,100 teachers, and a $220 million budget. So very high poverty, lots of work there. I've lived on the island for 3.5 years. It doesn't seem like a long time, okay? But it actually feels to me like it's been a long time. I've been coming here for almost 23 now. Had friends who lived here, and now we fell in love with the place by coming here every year. My children called it their happy place, and they knew we were going to end up here. And that's what we did. My wife and I have 36 years. After I retired from my initial career, we came down. I'm currently a handyman. No way I'm ever going to stop working. I just can't. My wife would divorce me. Why am I running? I've seen a change on Oak Island. A lot of it is a divisiveness. We're from here, you're not from here. We want it this way, we want it that way. And people aren't communicating with each other, and they're not working together. I've always worked with people. That's what I did. That's how I was successful. I turned around schools. That's one of the things I was known for. I was recognized nationally for going into failing schools and fixing them. Okay? That's why I am running. I saw a need, as he was saying, some people complain about it. I don't complain. I fix it. That's why I wanted to get involved. I have no ill will towards anybody. Ms. White and I are starting to develop a very, very nice friendship, and we have said we're running a very clean campaign together, and we're going to honor that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Next, for her opening statement this evening, we will go to mayoral candidate Liz White. Ms. White, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see a full room for this occasion. Many of you know me. I'm your current mayor and have been for 4 years. And in 2021, I ran on 3 pillars, if you will: leadership, relationships, and priorities. We've accomplished a great deal. I feel like the glass is half full, not half empty. We have a very bright future and a lot of things that are in the works that I'd like to see through. I believe that with the community's support, that we can lay a foundation for Oak Island's future that is bright. I have worked as a leader in the town. I have repaired and strengthened relationships and developed some relationships anew. And as it comes to priorities, we now have a 6-priority strategic plan divided across 3 years, and our budget is, this year's budget in particular, is very tightly tied to that strategic plan. So in essence, I've done what I said I was going to do. I said I was committed to you, the people, and committed to better Oak Island, and to work collaboratively so that everyone can share in what Oak Island is and becomes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. White, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the first question. The background being Oak Island faces ongoing challenges with beach nourishment and storm recovery. So the question to you, ma'am, how would you advocate for funding and intergovernmental support as mayor of Oak Island? 90 seconds.
Thank you. As far as beach nourishment is concerned, there's an uneven playing field. It's not fair specifically to Oak Island. The Army Corps of Engineers has a beach management plan that was written in 2006. And in that plan, it gives free sand to our friends at Caswell Beach and our friends in Bald Head Island, using the sand from the Inner Harbor Bar. When the Army Corps of Engineers is now giving us sand up to 58th Street from the edge of Caswell municipal line, it's costing us $6.6 million. So I personally have signed on, and the council has written a letter in support of a study that, if funded by DEQ, will, it's a precursor to something called regional sediment management, so that all of Southeast Brunswick County towns and beaches would then participate in that plan. So we would have a plan that is more cohesive, that follows along with all that is the sand transport system. And in that kind of an environment, we all share equally in the sediment and we all share equally in the costs. And I think it's only under that kind of a situation that we'll ever get the cooperation of the county.
Okay,
and
thank you,
more
ma'am.
for the feds.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, how would you advocate for funding and intergovernmental support as mayor? You have 90 seconds, sir.
I know that Brunswick County is one of the only counties that does not contribute to sand. We've had many discussions amongst ourselves on how can we do that, working with other towns that also need this funding as well. We spend $50 to $60 million on this every 5 years. We need to get the Army Corps of Engineers on board. We have to advocate for this. We have to have people getting up in there and making noise. If you've ever worked with the federal government or the state government, it's slow. Having been a federal liaison, I used to go to Washington and have to talk to people, have to go to Albany when I was in New York and talk to people. And you have to do that. So there's a lot of things with that. We have to get our neighbors involved. The more you have involved, the louder you are, the better chance you have of getting this funding. We have other things I know in place. I know they're working on very hard, getting a groin or a jetty in place. Okay, that can save up to 30% of your sand. There's lots of different avenues, but it's all about getting out there and talking and working with your neighbors and creating a very cohesive front.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, I'd like to ask you for the first response to the next question. Given the mayor's role in setting the tone for council collaboration, how would you foster more productive relationships among town council members?
Certainly. Right now, I know that they have their challenges. The mayor doesn't vote, but the mayor has a voice. The mayor needs to be able to see all sides of things and sometimes put their own feelings aside and try to work with those involved. People get stuck in their ways. One of the big things I did was working with unions. And if you've ever worked with the Teamsters or worked with some of the teachers' unions, they can get very stuck. You have to talk, you have to listen, you have to have people feel that they have a voice in the council, okay, that they're not being ignored. It may not always be that people agree, but you have to be able to have civil discourse, okay? And when you're done, even if it then turns into a yelling match, when you're done, you have to be able to shake hands and go have lunch together, okay, and put that behind you. That's what we need. Right now, you see it on Facebook, we're not having that. My strategy would be to communicate with everybody. I talk a lot. You ask people, I'll talk to the wall, okay? If it talks back, it's going to continue. I can work with people. I have. I've worked with a lot of people that I may not necessarily like, but we had to work to get the best thing for, in that case, the school district and the students. Here, it's for the town and the residents. It's just different names, but it's the same process.
Thank you, sir. Ms. White, if elected, how would you foster more productive relationships among town council members?
So building on what Chris has said, I think it's important to set a new set of expectations for the next council, where we, where we are all committed to be more unified in how we navigate. You can have difference of opinions, as Chris said, but that we're committed to professionalism, to mutual respect. We're open to consider ideas other than our own and mesh them together if necessary to do what is best for Oak Island. But it ultimately comes to individual commitment, that the individuals that are on council, much like the candidates have already agreed on, that we would run a clean campaign and not make it a divisive campaign. So it can be done. And I think one is setting an early tone, and second is depending on the individual council members to demonstrate professionalism and mutual respect.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. White, I'd like to ask you for the first response to the next question. What's your vision for balancing development with environmental stewardship? 90 seconds.
Not an easy question. Development going forward needs to be proportional. So there are a number of, I think there's a lot of fear as far as what development is going to bring to Oak Island, but we have to develop in order to continue to keep our financial picture viable. In terms of natural resources, we have our ordinances to protect our trees, which is under reconsideration. There are aspects that'll come to next Tuesday's meeting. I think in this case, partnerships are important. We just developed a partnership with UNCW to help us retain and protect natural shorelines. And they're also interested in stormwater and the Davis Canal. So I think it's important that they not collide or conflict with one another, but we put together a plan where it's they complement one another.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brown, what is your vision for balancing development with environmental stewardship?
Sure. A lot of times when people hear development, it brings up their cockles. Everyone thinks builders are bad, developers are bad. Everybody here is living in a house that a builder built, okay? Unless you built it yourself, okay? So there is a way to go and have builders and development and keep the environment safe. I'm a science guy. I'm a water rat. I know what I want here. We need to save the trees. I think the tree ordinance was a great start, but it needs to be a living document. It has some issues, okay? It's not a one-size-fits-all. Builders are more than willing to be part of the discussion. I've actually had builders come to me and say, we will donate 2,000 trees to you right now. We're happy to do this. We want to be part of the solution. We don't want to be viewed as being evil. They just are people like you and I trying to support their families. They don't want to go and create problems. So we can work with them. There's a lot of things in place. There's a lot of things in the federal, state, and with us. Again, it goes back to communicating with the individual builders, having a good plan, having the correct codes in place. I do believe in codes. We have to have them. As a handyman, I've been dealing with when we didn't have the codes. And it's quite interesting when you open up some walls. So it can be done.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, you first on the next question. How would you engage residents who feel disconnected from decision-making, especially in areas that are affected by flooding or potential infrastructure gaps?
It goes back to the communication. You have to get out there. You have to go to them. Some people can't come to town hall. They can't come to these meetings. They're not comfortable coming here, or they're not healthy enough to, or they just don't want to. So you have to get out to them. This is not that big of an area. You can get into see people. I've been doing that in my campaign. Small groups, going into neighborhoods, meeting with people. That's how you go and do it. Put it out there, be open, answer the phone. I've been having lots of phone calls with people. And then if you say you're going to go and do it, go and do it. Go and meet people. Get them engaged. I love the fact that things are streamed now. Everyone can be on their computer if they're good enough to do it. I had to get help to how to do a Facebook post. So, yeah, I could do computers, just not that stuff. But you could have a lot of community engagement. Our great parks and recreations, let's have everybody come over there. We can have other different events for engagement. It doesn't just have to be music. I love the music. I go to almost every one of them. So we could have a lot of different things to get people involved.
Thank you, sir. Ms. White, how would you engage residents who feel disconnected from decision-making, especially in areas affected by flooding or infrastructure gaps?
I think it's important. We certainly use all of the media that we have to push information out, but sometimes, as Chris suggested, you have to go to where they are to get the message out. The town manager and I this past year started listening sessions where she and I would hopscotch to different neighborhoods across the community to hear what their unique issues were and have an open conversation about how resolution might come about, and sometimes it can't come about for whatever reason, like a state statute, or there are just barriers to getting it done. But we follow up on each. There was another mechanism put in place by several council members called Conversations with Council. And each of those sessions were full, where 2 council members at the rec center, again, the community came and were able to have open dialogue with council members, where we took lots of notes about what the concerns are. We do have plans in place, and they're continuing to be developed. but it's incumbent upon the town to let the citizens know what these plans are, and in advance, not on top of an already a storm in action. So.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ms. White, I'd like to ask you for the first response to the next question. What's your vision for balancing tourism-driven growth with the preservation of Oak Island's residential character?
I think that the tourist development is, as far as the beach particular or the ocean side, is about built out. So I don't know that there's really that much more that can be done unless it's taking down some of the older buildings and putting up new ones. That money is very important to us, not just for the tax, the property tax that we get from those, but also the accommodations tax that goes with that, and the 2% that we get out of a 5% that I think that's close to $7 million a year. So that's fairly significant. And zoning has a big part in how to keep those separate and keep them going. So by creating zones and by creating situations where each will individually thrive.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brown, what's your vision for balancing tourism-driven growth with the preservation of Oak Island's residential character?
A lot of people go and think tourism is overwhelming, and it can be, but it is what drives our economy down here. We have been very hesitant in some cases to stop it, and we shouldn't. We don't need to stop tourism. Some people have suggested that. What we need to do is embrace it. We need to educate the tourists who are coming down here, the vacationers, okay? They're not coming down here to go to Disney World. They're not coming down here for amusement parks. They're coming here for the beach. They're coming here to go to a couple of restaurants. We need to go and develop these things for them. We need good restaurants. We have great restaurants. Trust me, I go to them all the time. But we need more because, as you know, on a Friday night in the summer, you can't get into them. So we need a few more spots. And then with that, the residential, we need to encourage more people to be here full time. Why? We have about 10,000 residents. That's hard to go and maintain restaurants and shops in the off season. There's not as many people going in there. The young people who are working at them aren't making as much money. There's a real fine balance between the two. And there's no real one answer for this. I think the town's doing a great job trying to make this nice for them. The summer programs, the concerts, the splash pads, that's what's bringing people in here.
Okay.
And we need to continue that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, next question to you first. How would you advocate for Oak Island at the county, state, and federal levels to secure the funding and the policy support the town needs?
By being relentless. You have to be. As I said before, you cannot just go and say, well, I made a phone call. I sent a letter. You have to be relentless with them. You have to be talking with your senators, both at the state level and at the federal level. You have to be going and pushing for every dollar that we could bring in here. Every dollar we bring in is one less dollar we have to raise by taxes. So that's where we have to be relentless with it. You have some very, very intelligent people in this community and in this town working here. And we need to take advantage of it and give them the opportunity to do this as well. As the mayor doesn't have any real power. That's the case. But the mayor has a big voice and can help set that tone and get in there and have it be that maybe they go and finally say, all right, we're going to give you this if you will stop bugging me. Okay? Remember Shawshank Redemption? That's how it works. All right? You keep on going on those things and you have to keep moving. So that's how I would look at it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. White, how would you advocate for Oak Island at the county, state, and federal levels to secure funding and the policy support the town needs?
I think you have to be at the table. Chris is right. You've got to be clear about what it is you're asking for. You want your ask to be targeted. You want to be specific. There are many grants. We have reached out to our state elected officials and asked for letters of support when we're applying for grants, which I think has bumped us up. But it's important. We gave a copy of our strategic plan to both Representative Miller and Senator Raybon, so they have that. And they know what we're interested in doing and how we're wanting to do it. Senator Raybon suggested after PTC 8 that we have a stormwater master plan. That's in the works now. So it's important to work collaboratively with them. Demanding something that you want is not always the best idea, but to try to nest your idea and build on something, say the commissioners are, a project the commissioners are doing, to be able to merge with something already going on is also a positive way to get their cooperation. And of course, the national level is more remote, but it's still available for federal dollars.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. White, first response to you and the next question. If elected, how would you plan to ensure improved transparency and accountability in town departments under your leadership?
So town departments don't work for the council. Those departments work for the manager. So that it requires a close collaborative relationship for the mayor to work with the manager in ensuring that there are mechanisms in place for performance evaluations, that each of the departments have goals, which this year came as part of the budgeting process. And they are then measured against those goals. So it's not the job of the mayor or the council to evaluate departmental performance. That's the role of the manager, but it doesn't mean we can't work collaboratively and cooperatively where there might be issues. And that is what's happening. It may not appear to be the case, but that is exactly what's happening. Our town manager is very easy to work with.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brown, if elected, how would you plan to ensure improved transparency and accountability in town departments under your leadership?
Again, it falls to the town manager, but with direction from the council and hopefully input from the mayor, we can get a better view of what each department is truly doing every day. Sometimes you look around and you're like, we have 140 employees. What do they do? Our roads aren't this, our roads aren't that. We need this, we need that. Why isn't it being fixed? And people get frustrated with that. So if we can go and let everyone know, these are the projects that are happening. These are the things that are completed. These are the things that we're working on. This is where the plan is going. It comes down to communication. It comes down to, from the bottom up, telling what's happening, have those supervisors, getting it up to the town manager, getting it up to the council, getting it out to the residents. Because ultimately, they're working for you. That's the reality. They're not working for the town of Oak Island. The town of Oak Island is here for you. So that's where we have to get all that information of what's actually happening and what the plans are. I hear it all the time. Why is this road not being paved? I drive down Dolphin pulling my trailer. It may come off the hitch one day. So we all know this, okay? So we need to get this out and get more communication from it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, next response to you, sir. How would you foster inclusive civic engagement in town if you're elected mayor?
Inclusive civic engagement. I seem like a running theme to get people engaged, to go and include everybody, we have to communicate. Everybody's different. You have different political groups, you have different social groups, you have those who are introverts, those who are extroverts. Somehow we have to reach everybody. And it has to be multimodal. You can't do it one way. You can't just do it with multimedia. Some people that doesn't work with, they don't see it, they aren't interested. We have to get into neighborhoods. I'm out and about all over. I was just over in South Harbor going and meeting with people about stormwater. So you have to get out there and communicate with everybody and get to know them and shake their hands. There's only 10,000 people here. All right. I had 10,000 students. All right. So you can do this.
Thank you, sir. Ms. White, how would you foster inclusive civic engagement around town if you're elected?
Pretty much what I've been doing the last 4 years is to be visible, to be out in and amongst the people of Oak Island, to always be open to hearing suggestions, hearing asks, whatever it is that they're putting forward. And I think we do a fairly good job. Our meetings are well attended and viewed. This is civic engagement right here, that you're come to hear the candidates, how they would manage if on council. So it's using absolutely every avenue that we have, including the face-to-face, and there are certainly opportunities that we can continue to have those face-to-face discussions. But you can't sit in an ivory tower and be close to what's going on. Civic engagement is something that happens day in, day out, be it at Food Lion, be it wherever it is that you might go. Constantly getting people interested in what the town is doing and engaging with our council members and our mayor and our town manager.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We're going to move on now to the closing statement for each of our candidates. Candidate, we're going to give you 3 minutes for a closing statement if you want to touch on potentially an issue we haven't discussed this evening, or just share your vision for what you'd like Oak Island to be as you are the mayor. And we're going to begin with Liz White. Ms. White, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement, ma'am.
So I think the path forward is to get a unified council. I feel very strongly about that we have to have people who are committed to working together, who are committed to talking to one another, who are committed to listening ideas that are not necessarily their own, and finding the best path for Oak Island to move forward. I think that's a mission imperative, and I'm very optimistic that that will happen. We have a number of issues on the table. Many of them have already been started. So there's the Stormwater Master Plan. We just got a DEQ grant. It's a 4-stage grant. So we just started the process 1 and 2. And that should get us to a shovel-ready project that would be stages 3 and 4. We have a streetscape plan for our commercial district. We have the Blue Ribbon Committee for pedestrian and traffic safety, a rec center feasibility plan, a beach management plan, a partnership with UNCW College of Science and Engineering. There's just so many positive things going on in the community, and I'm just honored to be allowed to be part of that, and would appreciate your continued support for me as your mayor, so I can see things through.
Thank you, ma'am. Next for his closing statement this evening.
Timer has a little problem.
I can keep the time up here for now. I'll keep the time up here. Oh, you've got it there? Okay. Next for his closing statement this evening, we will go to mayoral candidate Chris Brown. Mr. Brown, 3 minutes, sir.
Sure. Thank you. I really am thankful for all of you coming tonight. Like Ms. White said, the number one thing that has to happen is that the council has to get unified. They are not now, but they need to get there. That's the job of the mayor, I believe, to help them get there. The town has done some amazing things and moved forward. I am not going to stand up here or sit up here and say that it's all bad. It's not. We've made great strides. Our codes, the UDO, have really been improved. A lot of people are complaining about getting letters right now, saying, oh, this is bad. What happened was it wasn't necessarily done gently. It was more like with a sledgehammer. That's where my whole idea of communication comes in and engaging people. It's not that things were wrong. It just didn't come out right. We have a lot of things to still work on. Safety. We had a tough summer. We had a real tough summer here. Crosswalks. I know that we're working on crosswalks and they're doing a great job. They put in crosswalks, maybe in a spot where, with maybe asking for a little forgiveness on it before permission, which is, I think, a great way to go with things when it comes to safety. I have something that always gets on my craw, golf carts. People hate to hear it. They drive me bananas. When I watch that 12, 13, 14-year-old driving it down East Oak Island Drive, it scares me. And I am just terrified that we're going to end up not doing something about golf carts and making it safer for them until there's a tragedy. And that terrifies me, especially with children. We need to go and keep working on our fundraising stream. We need to get business. We have opportunities to bring good businesses in here. And it's not necessarily right here on Oak Island Drive. 906, 211, out by Lowe's. I'd love to see a restaurant district out there that captures the whole county and gets people into there. That's a funding stream. If we don't do things like that and we don't build up, we're going to have to go and figure out how to pay for things. And we all know where that's going to go. And none of us want to go there. We have to work with tourists. We have to get them here. Tourism was down this year. Numbers are going to come out, but we're down a little bit when you start talking to people. Maybe not full capacity, partial weeks, things like that. That's going to affect our bottom line. That affected how much money comes into our restaurants and our shops, and affects our taxes because we don't get as much. I really want to thank Liz White. She and I have started to become friends on this. And we are going to keep this going, and we're going to make sure that Oak Island is successful. We've talked about a lot of different things together, and when this is all over, we'll continue talking. But ultimately, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming out and being involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our two mayoral candidates, if you would. Chris Brown and Liz White. We are going to take a quick 5-minute break, let the candidates switch out, and then we'll be back in 5 minutes to start with the council forum. So stay with us if you can. Give us 5 minutes and we'll be right back. Okay, everyone, we are back, and we have the candidates running for town council here in Oak Island. We have 6 candidates running for 2 open seats on council. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 90 seconds to answer the questions, and we'll have time for a closing statement as well. And candidates, what I have tried to do is make it so that not everybody gets the first question first. You don't follow the same person. I've kind of switched who gets it first, who gets it second, so that it's fair to everybody as we go through the process, okay? We're going to go with our opening statement for 2 minutes with Oak Island Town Council candidate Tommy Brown. Mr. Brown, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, sir.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. My name is Tommy Brown. For those of you who I haven't met, my journey to Oak Island began a little over 8 years ago when my partner Nick brought me down for a weekend trip. His family's been vacationing here since the 70s. Then back in 2020, we were again here for a trip, stumbled upon a house, which quickly became our home. And since then, over the past 5 years, we've really spent time learning about this community and making it our home. We found our church. We've gone to many of the multiple events that go on in this town, but mostly spent time with our neighbors who have become quickly very close friends. Professionally, I'm an attorney. I work remote full-time for a pharmaceutical company. And in that role, I've developed skills in collaboration, consensus building, negotiation, all skills I believe would complement the role of council. I'm a regular attendee of council meetings. Earlier this year, I completed our town Citizens Academy, all of which have kept me up to date on the opportunities and issues that our town faces, as well as appreciate all what it takes to run our town. To jump right in, I believe our town is at a crossroads where the decisions we make over the next few years will impact us for generations to come, and that's why I'm running. I believe we need leaders that put residents first, that balance growth with preservation, and ensure that for each step we take towards our future, we're also ensuring that we're maintaining the characteristics that we all fell in love with. My goal for Oak Island is simple: to continue to keep it as a community where families of all ages can thrive, where progress always has purpose, and where we're making decisions that not only take into account today, but also our future. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next for her opening statement, Town Council candidate Tracy Bynum. Ms. Bynum, you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone in attendance, for joining us tonight. I've long since said, since I started running, a well-informed voter is a good voter. So thank you for making this step tonight to not just learn about me, but the other candidates, because you do have 2 voices. My journey to Oak Island began in the early 80s. I didn't know it then, but my husband's family bought a lot here and started building a house weekend by weekend on Northwest 5th. And then we became vacationers here over the lifespan of our marriage. We have 3 kids, Coley, who is 16, Hudson, who is 15, and Mathis, who is 14. I'll let y'all take that in. It's a lot. But we began vacationing here, and then we bought a house in 2020 and just fell in love. We feel like we've given our kids the childhood we had. They still can ride their bikes. The local restaurant owners know them. My kids also know if you don't behave, someone will reach out to your mom and tell them what you're doing, and I love that. After we moved here, we started a business, Quicksand Beach Concierge, from the ground up. We've been in operation. This is our 5th season. We employ 9 to 12 young men a summer who have continually worked for us every year because they love working for us, because that's the people we are. After I started Quicksand, I was asked to sit on the business advisory board, where I served as secretary my first time. I was then appointed to a second term to the business advisory board. And that's really what led me to want to serve our town further, because I am invested in generations to come. I want my kids to grow up here and my grandbabies. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next for his opening statement this evening, Town Council candidate Chip Frazier. Mr. Frazier, 2 minutes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to my wife for backing me up. I've been a public servant over 40 years. 24 years, I was an Air Force officer, a B-52 pilot, and staff officer. And then after I retired from the military, I went into public service as an elected official. In Nebraska, I served as an elected official for 20 years. in the school board, and on a sanitation improvement district. That's really important because the sanitation improvement district in Nebraska is responsible for constructing and maintaining roads and sewers. That's right. I have a lot of technical experience in both road maintenance and sewer maintenance. I have a unique skill set that sets me apart from all the fine people sitting here at the dais today. But I think it's more important to focus on family values. The family-friendly values that we cherish here on Oak Island have to do with balance, harmony, and common sense. Balance is unity versus division. Serving the town serving you or offering amenities versus the revenue the town has available to it. People versus special interests. Controlled development versus uncontrolled growth. And ordinances versus property rights. In harmony, two-way communication is critical. And the spirit of compromise is undeniable. And then finally, when it comes to common sense, you need to trust the town council, and the town council needs to adopt a code of ethics and respect the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next for her opening statement this evening, Town Council candidate Carrie McCulloch. Ms. McCulloch, you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Folks, I'm very honored to be sitting here in front of you tonight. And that's because I care about this community. I care about its people. I care about its spirit, because we should never forget this is a family town who has a beach. My history here, my husband and I have been here for about 25 years. We came here in December of 2000. And we have a good story because we meandered onto the old Long Beach Pier in December of 2000 and ran into a fantastic group of locals who was having an oyster roast with a lot of good beverages, and they just invited us to join in. And that was our first weekend here on Oak Island. We just closed on our home, so we knew how welcoming this place was. The bad part was I also received the worst case of the Oak Island Carolina crud that I had ever received in my life. So I also was able to visit the Dosher Hospital emergency room that night as well. But it was a great community, and we knew that we made the right choice. So why am I running? I think I bring a lot of good experience from a business perspective. I'm a 25-year plus business professional, advanced business education. I've done a lot of work in the town. We've lived here 10 years, but for the last 5 years, I've invested very much time in learning about local issues by serving on a lot of different boards and steering committees. I think going forward, we have some work to do on council in terms of transparency and improving our communications with the citizenry. I'm a forward thinker. I do have a very strong philosophy that this is one team, and that is Team Oak Island. I'm a problem solver. I work in facts, fairness, and with collaboration. Without collaboration, you have no problem solving. My goal together with all of you is to keep our town strong, be more unified, and be prepared for the future.
Thank you, ma'am. Next for his opening statement this evening, Town Council candidate Reese Simmons. Mr. Simmons, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I'm glad everybody had a chance to come out tonight. I haven't seen this room this full, I don't think ever. It's a good crowd, and appreciate you coming. I bought a house on Northeast 72nd Street in 97. The next year, there was some talk about merging the town of Oyeopon Beach and Long Beach. So I thought I'd keep my fingers wet in that. I volunteered for a committee for consolidation consideration. And the next year we did consolidate, and the town of Oak Island was born in 99. And ever since then, I've been doing something in the town, whether it be on the council or planning board or Board of Adjustment and Appeals, Emergency Services Board, whatever. Just never seemed to get enough of it. Well, I had a little free time coming up, and I said, well, let me just see if I could try this again, see if I can help the town a little bit more. Now, unless you saw what Oak Island was when it was incorporated, when it was Long Beach, there was a couple of paved roads. I think Beach Road was paved and Oak Island Drive was paved. The rest of them are dirt. And we didn't have a sewer system. We had septic tanks that were leaking and leaching everywhere, and we didn't have a decent water system. All that came about in a matter of 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, something like that. Unless you saw that from the beginning and saw the town blossom into what we are today, it's hard to imagine how far we've come in 25 years. But I feel I got a little left in me to offer. I'm not aged out completely yet. So with your help, I'd like to contribute a couple, 3, 4 more years to the development of Oak Island. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, for his opening statement this evening, Town Council candidate Scott Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to you all. I've never seen this room this full either. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on. For me, this is one of the easiest ways to do your homework as far as candidates go. I'm probably the newest member of Oak Island sitting here. My wife and I moved here in 2020, 5 days after a CS blew through. There's a whole different story about that. But we came here the year before, and I fell in love with the island immediately. We were looking at properties before we even left on vacation. My background, I spent 25 years in the corporate world in a variety of management and analytical positions. My reputation back in the day was I was able to find money for those companies that I was working for, money that they weren't aware that they weren't getting, money that they didn't know that they could get. I love playing with numbers. And the reason I'm running is because I see, it's been mentioned before, I see the town at a crossroads. And when I look at that and talk about that, we're at a crossroads financially. We've done a great job as a town of being able to keep taxes reasonable, but we're going to be running into some headwinds here in the next couple of years, I believe, that could make that really challenging. So I want to bring my expertise to the town of Oak Island to be able to find some creative ways to continue to make it affordable for all of us. One of the things that I don't really care for a whole lot are folks that are moving because they can't afford it. And I want to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Candidates, you'll have 90 seconds to answer each of the following questions. Ms. McCulloch, I'd like to ask you for the first response to the next question, ma'am. What is your position on securing beach nourishment funding and long-term shoreline protection in Oak Island?
Well, currently we have a secured beach management plan that should take us out the next 6 years. And that, fortunately for all of us, is fully funded at this moment. But there's no excuse, as I believe Mayor White had mentioned, for no support for regional sand management. I would definitely be in support of moving those efforts forward. I just recently heard about the fact that the South Carolina Army Corps of Engineers just provided $72 million for Myrtle Beach. So from from Cherry Grove all the way to Garden City, they will have sand paid for fully by the federal government. So I believe that we should be raising our hands, being very active and mobilizing to start requesting dollars like that. We need those kinds of projects and that kind of support here.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Stevenson, what's your position on securing beach nourishment funding and long-term shoreline protection?
Beach nourishment is one of the things that I've been looking at very closely since I decided to run for office. It's been, I think Chris mentioned it in the first session, Brunswick County is the only coastal county in North Carolina that does not provide funding for their local beach nourishment. I would like to see that change. Tourism is a $1.4 billion industry in Brunswick County, and the folks aren't coming to see all the developments that are being built. They're coming to see our beaches. I believe that the county has a responsibility to be helping us with that. We're also in the process of potentially being a federally designated beach, which would bring the cost down tremendously because then the Corps of Army Engineers would provide the lion's share of our financing. one of the things that I would love to see in my time before I leave office would be no need for a sand tax here on Oak Island. And I think we can do that. But most importantly, we've got to make sure that we have state and county assistance with a resource that is not just unique to Oak Island. It is a regional asset. And I believe that by taking that approach, we can fund further beach nourishment down the road without any need to raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bynum, what is your position on securing beach nourishment funding and long-term shoreline protection?
Well, as a young parent, I am definitely involved or concerned about the long-term beach management program, but I'm going to be really honest, I do have some questions about it. You are starting to see some things going on in our government where we are taking away local government's ability to make choices and control their own town. So I do have some questions, quite honestly, about us being a federal beach that I am not really getting the answers to. I do not want to see us, in the name of a dollar, give up our rights as a town where we would lose control of our beaches. So I have some questions. I will be very honest, this is probably the area I have the most to learn, and I am happy to say that. But I don't want to pretend that I know it all, but I have a lot of questions, but I also know when I have questions, I'm happy to seek answers. I know we have a lot of people in place that will help me get those answers, but I won't leave a stone unturned to get answers. I won't leave a stone unturned to ensure that our residents don't bear the burden of our sand. Our beaches are our greatest asset, but they are actually our biggest burden financially too. So I am very committed to really diving into this and understanding I don't want to see us make a rash decision today that will affect my children down the road because we made a quick decision today. I want to make sure we have all the answers before we make a decision.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Simmons, what's your position on securing beach nourishment funding and long-term shoreline protection?
Well, on long-term shoreline protection, hardened structures are forbidden by the state, so that's out of the question. Oak Island's got more miles of beach strand than any other town in the county, possibly more than all of them put together. And when you have that much beach to keep up and re-nourish, it can get real expensive. We've had dredging projects piecemealed here, piecemealed there. We've never been able to get to the point where we had an engineered beach that would guarantee us constant re-nourishment with federal help. Now, we had a time there when we pumped some sand from the Borderway holding basin over there. And I don't know if anybody was here then or not, but we had a rock beach for a while. That was terrible. And it took a long time to get that straightened out. But as far as beach renourishment, that's got to be our main priority. That's our livelihood. That's the lifeblood of the town is the beach. People are coming here to go to Jungle Golf and Dairy Queen. They're coming here for that beach. And you notice I don't use the word tourist. Tourists go to Vegas and Disney World. These are visitors coming to Oak Island to see our beach, spend time and spend their money. And it's up to us to protect that asset, to keep a viable economic engine running.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, what is your position on securing beach nourishment funding and long-term shoreline protection, sir?
Yes, thank you. So we just finished a nourishment project earlier this year on the west side, set to begin another one on the east side later this year into 2026. Assuming no erosion event or storm, knock on wood, very hard, we have 5 to 6 years before another renourishment project. What we cannot allow to happen is for us to sit on our hands during that period. When it comes to beach nourishment, every option in my mind is on the table. Looking into terminal groins, developing those relationships that our mayoral candidates talked about. Scott spoke to it. In 2024, Brunswick County saw over $1.2 billion spent from visitors in our county, the majority of which in coastal towns. $0 was provided to us for either of these nourishment projects from the county. It's unacceptable. We have to leverage the relationships that our current mayor and manager have developed, We have to also look at what I would call more common sense, everyday things that we could do to protect what we have currently, right? Update signage, explain to our visitors why playing on the dunes is a big deal and shouldn't happen. We should look into environmentally friendly fencing along the dunes. And when it's time to re-update our beach management plan, we should absolutely look into updating setback rules for homes built on beachfront plots, if any. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Frazier, what's your position on securing beach nourishment funding and long-term shoreline protection?
I'm a proponent of the engineered beach. There's a very specific reason for that, and it comes back to my experience in a prior life in Nebraska. I was responsible for the dikes that protected a lake community. And we had a choice there to make those dikes the engineered dike with the help of the Corps of Engineers or not. And it fell on the community to pay for the dikes until they were met the engineer quality standard. Therefore, we're much further along in Oak Island with respect to the beaches. We already have, as Tommy was saying, we have several projects in progress or already accomplished to position our beaches towards the engineered beach. That's a very important accomplishment because it will provide federal money to help offset our cost to maintain the beach once we achieve that level. The beach is our first line of defense for our infrastructure. Remember that our water, sewer, and electric is buried on Oak Island, right next to the roads. If we don't protect the roads and we don't protect our infrastructure, the beach will be the least of our worries. There are ways to do that. We need to work with Brunswick to get them to pony up. We need small business development so that we can help build the revenue base, and we need groins on the west end.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Simmons, I'd like to get your response first to the next question, sir. And that is, what is your position on updating the right-of-way and land use policies to reflect the growth in Oak Island?
We've got a pretty good land use plan right now. Could use a little tweaking, but it's workable. The right of way, I think we got off on the wrong foot earlier this year with some of the ordinances we put in place about the right of way and what you could do with the right of way in front of your house. I'm a proponent of property owners' choice of what he wants to do with his property to a certain extent. And I think we got a little out of hand with that particular right-of-way ordinance earlier this year. Of course, that got resolved after some kickback. I don't think there's a real big problem at this point that we really need to knee-jerk reaction to do too much too soon. Sometimes you can do more harm than good if you dive into something without knowing exactly what you're getting into. That's why I think it's better to kind of ease into it, take it easy. And I'd be a proponent of that more so than just haphazardly throwing things around and making ordinances and changing the way we do things. It's been pretty good for the last 25 years. Not a lot needs changing right now.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, what's your position on updating the right-of-way and land use policies to reflect the growth in Oak Island?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate that the question doesn't reference turning into a HOA. I think the conversation recently has become one that evokes emotion and not one that gives proposed solutions to our residents. When it comes to the right-of-way and any other option we talk about tonight, we can find balanced solutions as long as we keep the conversation tied to the problem and proposed solutions. With respect to right-of-way, if step one is sending out dozens, if not hundreds of letters to residents suggesting they're non-compliant, I would have liked to have thought someone on staff would have said, maybe the ordinance is the issue, not this many residents. I think we can find a balanced solution that ensures that the original intent of right-of-way ordinances to protect and ensure safe areas in front of folks' homes from an aesthetic purpose is protected and maintained, as well as balanced with the rights of property owners. I can guarantee you when this comes in front of council, there will be numerous residents who have their own ideas. So I don't think anyone who's elected or currently on council will have to come up with any ideas themselves. But again, the communication, as everyone has sort of spoken to, I think was the real failure here. So as long as we get back to the question, which is what can we improve to address this problem, I think we can be successful.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McCulloch, what's your position on updating the right-of-way and land use policies to reflect growth in Oak Island?
I think of late, our community's been dealing with a course correction with respect to code enforcement. I think in the past, there had been either haphazard, lacking code enforcement in total. And so we're in a period of correction of that course, right? I think that currently we need a better description with respect to right-of-way in terms of what is an obstruction. We need more clarity on that. And I think generally, as we've all said, we've talked about better communication between the governing body, the staff, and the citizens. I think this is a prime example of where communication failed. Because whenever there's a policy change, an ordinance change that affects you at your home, we should be able to tell you what we're doing, why we're doing it, and when is it going to be implemented, and what does it mean to you? How will it affect you? And I think in the past, we've not done a good job of those kind of things when we have these types of changes in the policies.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Frazier, what's your position on updating the right-of-way and land use policies to reflect growth in Oak Island?
They both need to be updated, but I have a difficult time segregate or combining both of those things together. The right-of-way, as we've discussed, issue is one of enforcement, if you will, of existing ordinance or a change to our ordinance versus the property rights that every property owner enjoys. It's important to understand that as we enforce our ordinances, we have to respect our residents. We cannot adopt an ordinance and then decide to enforce that ordinance if we don't take into account the individual issues that come to mind every time you see a property on Oak Island. I think it's really important to maintain a balance between our ordinances and property rights for that reason. With respect to the comprehensive land use plan, that's a 20-year plan. So what we're talking about for the right-of-way is really a near-term issue. The longer-term issue of the comprehensive land use plan is a good idea. I strongly support the comprehensive land use plan.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stevenson, what is your position on updating the right-of-way and land use policies to reflect growth in Oak Island?
Well, I'm going to kind of take Chip's approach to this because I also see this as two separate things. I believe that the issues that we have with right-of-way, that we all know, or many of us know, that goes back to a different time when somebody decided that we didn't need to enforce certain regulations. Trying to figure out how I want to say this. I think the enforcement wasn't ready, aim, fire. I think it was fire, aim, ready. And it provided an opportunity for us to see that maybe the town acted a little too quickly in just going with the enforcement. I look at the right-of-way also as an example of overregulation. When we have to have discussions about whether or not kids can have basketball goals at the end of their driveway, to me, that feels like we're overregulating things. As far as the land use plan goes, and I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach on this, the club that's being proposed does a fantastic job of talking about residential and commercial stuff. We need to have plans for the canal. We need to have plans for the marsh. We need to have plans for the areas that are not going to be developed and how we're going to protect those as well. And to me, with the growth that's going on, it's more critical than ever that we have a plan that addresses those issues.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bynum, what's your position on updating the right-of-way and land use policies to reflect growth in Oak Island?
So my position would be, sometimes it's okay to ask the question, does this still serve us well as a community? And if it no longer serves us, we can change it. I do think the execution, I don't know if we could have possibly carried it out in a worse way. People will never rally behind things they don't understand. I think we could have done a better job communicating what was coming so that people understood, right? When people understand, you have buy-in from a community. So I believe we could do a much better job at clarifying what was the intent, what was the purpose, and why are we doing this now? And I feel like we didn't like just miss the mark, we like missed the book on it. I am definitely pro property rights. So that's something I'm very passionate about. I could actually talk about this for a long time, so I'm trying to figure out exactly what's important to say. The land use plan, it's a great plan, but plans are only as good as what we implement, and we don't have a great track record with that as a town. So I feel like we have a lot of trust to build with our town to execute the plan and put it in place, and we cannot just talk. We have all these plans out there right now that we have got to quickly prioritize and make happen so that we do not continue to lose the trust of our voters.
Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Bynum, I'd like to get you to respond first to the next question. The town council has recently discussed the idea of increasing the building height restriction in Oak Island. The question, ma'am, where do you stand on the building height restriction, and would you work to make any changes to it?
So I'm going to keep this brief. I don't think it really matters so much what I think about it. That will have to go to a voter referendum. So the voters, the people of this town, are the ones that ultimately will have the say. I am only one vote in a town of 10,000 people. So that's where I stand with it. It would have to go to a referendum. I'm just one vote in that.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Simmons, where do you stand on the building height restriction issue, and would you work to make any changes?
I agree with Casey on that. We've got that issue pretty much settled until we get a populace that doesn't like the beach the way it is as much as we do now. It'd take a majority vote, a referendum to change the height limit. So it's a non-issue at this point. And I don't see that changing for years and years to come until we develop north of the waterway and get another Brunswick Forest over there with enough people to control the island, do whatever they want on it. Until then, the height limit's not going to change, and I don't see any reason to even discuss that as far as developing the downtown areas. What I hear the height limit would be for. It just doesn't make sense. I wouldn't be for it at all in any shape or form.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir, but that's the question they gave me.
Well, that's the answer I got.
I apologize if you're not worth discussing, but I have to ask the question anyway. Mr. Stevenson, where do you stand on the building height restriction, and would you work to make any changes to it?
That'd be the shortest answer I give. I'm with Chasey. This is not a town council issue. It'll never be an issue that the town council itself can determine one way or the other. It's going to be up to y'all. And as far as what is being discussed, it's up to you. It really is. Do I have an opinion on it? I don't, because I have not really looked into it, because it's not something that was a priority in running my campaign, because I knew, like Chasey said, I'm just one vote.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, where do you stand on the building height restriction, and would you work to make any changes?
So this is a difficult question, but I'm not asking for your vote to avoid difficult questions, right? So the reason we're discussing this is because potentially we may have to raise taxes. We may have to cut services. One way to get around that, potentially floated, is to allow commercial buildings in the commercial core to have a higher height, which would allow larger buildings, possibly with larger floor plan or footprints, bringing in more property values and taxes. If this came before me today, council would have to vote, and I would vote no. I would have the conversation though, right? How many questions need to be answered before we can then give our residents a say in this matter. What would setbacks look like around a 4-story building? What would parking look like? How could we ensure that if we did allow these buildings to be built, they wouldn't sit vacant? There are a number of questions that still have to be answered, but I'm willing to have that difficult conversation if the alternative or the failure to find other solutions is to raise your taxes or to cut our town services.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Frazier, where do you stand on the building height restriction, and would you work to make any changes?
I can't think of an issue that prompts a more visceral response. As I have gone around Oak Island, all over Oak Island, introducing myself to people, that's the one issue that I get the most vehement response. People are against raising the height limit either in the commercial district or in the residential district. I think it's mostly a reference to something going on in the business district with the idea that it will improve the business environment. I have a simple question that needs to be answered. Tommy's outlined many good questions, but I have one that's basic, back to common sense. The current limit is 35 feet. How many structures are at 35 feet in the business district now? One that I can think of, the FedEx, where the FedEx office is. So if we raise it to 41 feet, how does that make it more economically viable if we already have 35 feet and people aren't using that limit? So I think, yes, it needs a referendum. It's not something that we need to answer right now, but there are other issues that are more important to the town than raising the building height. Obviously, I'm against it until I get more information.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McCulloch, where do you stand on the building height restriction, and would you work to make any changes?
I was fortunate to be a part of the steering committee for the comprehensive land use plan update. And I think some of this conversation came about as a result of the streetscape master plan, which is part of that comprehensive land use plan. What should drive the development of our commercial corridors will be the economic development strategic plan that is in process, has just begun to be developed. That should drive what kind of businesses we want to bring in that commercial corridor, and then that should then help us understand what kind of structures we need. We don't know that yet. And so I think it's sort of preliminary to be even having these conversations. It appears to me that that kind of height limit increase would be more geared toward vehicular traffic as opposed to a pedestrian focus, which is what I'd like to see more of in the downtown areas. But if I were asked today, like some of the other candidates have said, I would not support any move to a referendum on a height limit increase in the commercial core.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Stevenson, I'd like to get your response first to the next question. Would you support an effort to divide Oak Island into districts for electing council members instead of at-large seats?
I would. I would. There's going to come a time, we all know, that the bulk of this island, the island itself, has pretty much been developed out as far as residential goes. We still got some empty lots, but certainly not as many as we did 3 or 4 years ago. So the bulk of the development is going to be occurring north of the waterway. And I believe it was Chip that mentioned a little bit earlier that at some point, the residential population north of the waterway could be larger than the population on the island itself. So the idea of having voting districts is very important because that is the way that the island residents can keep control of the things that are our direct need. We don't need a bunch of folks coming in, having the weight to be able to say, yes, I live across the bridge. I want the island to look like this. So the idea of districts is something that I would support.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Frazier, would you support an effort to divide Oak Island into districts for electing council members instead of at-large?
At this time, no, I wouldn't. And my answer to that is relatively simple. One, I haven't studied that prospect, but I have a gut response, and that is that, as Scott was saying, growth in Oak Island is at one point going to outgrow the island. In other words, the majority of the population will be on the mainland. And if you were to assign districts, how would you allocate those districts? Would you gerrymander the districts? Would you somehow pick a street and the person on the north side of the street is represented by one representative versus someone else representing the other side of the street? I can't answer the question affirmatively at this point. I don't have enough information, but I don't think that districts at this point make sense for Oak Island as it exists.
Mr. Brown, would you support an effort to divide Oak Island into districts for electing council members instead of at-large seats?
Yes, so I'll be short. I agree with Chip. This isn't a priority of mine. I don't believe, given all the other topics we've talked about today, and I'm sure we'll talk about, that this is a priority. It's something that needs to be sort of at the ready for all the reasons that Scott gave. But at this point, this is not my priority, no.
Ms. Bynum, would you support an effort to divide Oak Island into districts for electing council members instead of at-large seats?
It's not something I would support at this time. It's something I do think that we have to keep on our radar. We have not gotten to the point where I do believe that we are there growth-wise, but it's in our future. So I don't want to see us kick the can down the road so far where it's at our doorstep and we are being very reactive. I would like to see us be proactive. I have some concerns about how we would, like Chip said, how we would do it. I mean, I think about on the West End where we do not have a lot of full-time residents there. It would be an incredibly difficult topic to deal with that would need to be taken with careful consideration, very careful guidance. We would really need to think through a lot, but I do not believe it's something we need to address currently, but I do think it is something that we need to kind of have on the forefront of our mind in the next few years.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. McCulloch, would you support an effort to divide Oak Island into districts for electing council members instead of at-large?
Like my colleagues, Chip, Chasey, and Tommy have already indicated, I agree it's not a priority for us, but we certainly should have it, as Chasey said, on the radar. Our population continues to grow. And my concern would be, how would those districts, like we have said, be established? What does that math look like? And I'm not really sure that I would need a lot more information on how that would shake out in order to make sure that, a town council should represent all the citizens fairly. I certainly believe that. But I think that it would take a lot of homework to figure out how to do and develop those districts fairly.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Simmons, would you support an effort to divide Oak Island into districts for electing council members instead of at-large seats?
Eventually, yes, especially with the development on the north of the waterway got underway. Right now, it's kind of lopsided anyway. The Yopon area has a much higher percent of permanent residents than the area or the island at large, the old Long Beach area. Plus, they annexed across the bridge and got South Harbor. So that's another voting block. It might make sense sooner or later to chop it up and not let one group control everything. That's the way I would handle that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Frazier, I'd like your response first to the next question. Would you place a high priority on exploring the consolidation of water and sewer services with Brunswick County? Why? Why not?
That's a real thorny issue. Every time you work with Brunswick County seems to win. So would I be inclined to combine our sewer system with Brunswick County is the way I understand the question. And in that regard, my understanding is that we are at about half capacity of our sewer system. So do we need to combine with Brunswick County? Not based on use, but how about in terms of cost? Look at what our sewer system has cost us. And this year, we just renegotiated lower interest rate on $25 million of our sewer debt. And that debt will go out to 2036. So we may have other opportunities depending on how the national economy goes, to renegotiate those loans further and reduce that cost. Right now, your sewer use fee of $601 is due to come down, or could come down, as we approach that 2036 deadline. So I would not be in favor of combining with Brunswick for sewer service, but I think it's certainly worth looking at, particularly as you look at mainland growth and that becoming a more practical solution for mainland sewer system.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Simmons, would you place a high priority on exploring consolidation of water and sewer services with Brunswick County?
Oh, we got to understand, right now, we get our water from Brunswick County, and our sewer goes to Brunswick County. The town of Oak Island has one little sewer plant on Fish Factory Road that Yopon Beach built years and years ago. The rest of it is pumped over to the county system, and they treat it for us, and we pay per 1,000 gallons or however they meter it. So we're already in partnership with them to some extent. Secondly, the sewer system on Oak Island is unique from any other sewer system in the county. It's a vacuum system. The only type of system you can have on a flat sand strip. It's just not practical to do it any other way. That makes it unique. And that'd be another reason I don't think we'd want to merge with Brunswick County, but the fact is they're already treating our sewer, except for a small portion that goes over to Fish Factory Road. And we already get our water from them. We put the pipe in the ground, we put the towers in the air, but Brunswick County pumps the water over here to us. So we're already hand in hand with them.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McCulloch, would you place a high priority on exploring the consolidation of water and sewer services with Brunswick County?
It's my understanding, as Chip mentioned, that we are under capacity on the sewer system. That's a positive. But we do have about $7 million a year in debt service on that sewer system out to 2036. So it's important that we consider all options. It was my understanding that this was looked at many years ago. Don't know exactly the date, I don't recall, but there was some complexity with the structure of the county having to pay off our debt and taking on county debt to be able to pay for that transition. So it's that would be an issue, I believe. I'm a little bit more concerned on the water side because it's also my understanding that the town of Oak Island, absent high volume, when we have a lot of tourists here in the summertime, most of our water here on Oak Island comes from the artesian wells right off 211. There's 14 of them out there. And I'm happier to have that well water than I am water from the Cape Fear, which is what the county would provide us and what they do provide us when we need it during high volume. So I kind of like the Oak Island water.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Stevenson, would you place a high priority on exploring the consolidation of water and sewer services with Brunswick County?
I haven't thought about this a whole lot.
Got a minute and 24 seconds.
I know, I'm processing it as the time's clicking away. This is something that I hadn't looked at. As Chip pointed out, if we're under capacity, that tells me that we're in a good position as far as the island proper goes. Somebody else mentioned, and it may have been Chip, that any development going on across the waterway, that may make sense to tie into county sewer. The water is provided by the county. The only way I would consider this a priority is if there was some big financial gain for Oak Island involved in that. And the complexities of it are going through my head right now, tell me that that's not a road that we'd be able to go down.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brown, would you place a high priority on exploring the consolidation of water and sewer services with Brunswick County?
Right. So to repeat what Carrie said, the cost or the debt that we have related to the sewer system, to what Chip pointed out, the uniqueness of our sewer system being a vacuum sewer system, I'm unsure the county would be interested in partnering with us. But when it comes to prioritizing relationships with the county, I would prioritize a few other areas: beach renourishment, helping us pay and maintain and manage stormwater runoff. I think folks have really touched on it. Unless there's a financial reason to look into this, when it comes to a priority with developing a relationship with our county leaders, I have a number of other areas on my list that I'd like to look at first.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bynum, would you place a high priority on exploring the consolidation of water and sewer services with Brunswick County?
It would not be something I would place a high priority on. I believe it's just, we've all said it up here, it's just not something that it needs to be placed a priority on. If we're under capacity, if the things that we're doing are working, let's don't go look for other problems. What I would put priority on is making sure that our water is safe for our families to drink. It is something I am very concerned about. Yes, it does come out of the wells, but water is tricky about how it, the whole cycle of water. I am very concerned about our drinking water on Oak Island. My kids will tell you it is a huge priority. We don't drink it currently, but we do unfortunately still bathe in it, and our body is still absorbing that water. We still go out to restaurants where they're making ice and cooking with it. I can assure you water, I'm waiting for Aaron Brockovich to show up any day now. It's an issue that I could spend more than 36 seconds talking about, but that is something I will place a very high priority on, is making sure the residents of this island, that we don't turn into a Flint, Michigan, and we realize it too late, because we don't have, it's that serious. It has to be a priority for our residents to have safe drinking water.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brown, I'd like to ask you for the first response to the next question, sir. How should the town address short-term rentals and their impact on neighborhoods?
Right. So I think to a certain extent, we are operating under a perception as to rental properties on this island. As I understand, the town receives a check each month from Airbnb, VRBO, and it's just one check. It doesn't itemize the properties it's covering. So when we discuss rental properties on the island, we're working under the perception of the rental signs in front of each house. I first believe we have to audit how many rental properties are actually on our island, in our town, before we can even discuss what the next step would be. The failure being us creating districts where certain number of rentals could be, but then missing the district that has 90% of them. Unless we have facts and aren't operating under perception, I feel that any policy would be a failed policy. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stevenson, how should the town address short-term rentals and their impact on neighborhoods?
I think the market's going to have more of an impact than the town council ever could have. It's been mentioned, it was a slow summer this year. In my mind, I think part of that is back in 2020, when you couldn't go anywhere, was a great opportunity for folks to raise prices on short-term rentals. It is now 2025. You can go anywhere on the globe, a lot of places, a lot cheaper than you can go to rent for a week in Oak Island. So I think some of this concern is going to be market corrected over the next couple of years. It's going to make things a little bit rough for us as far as setting up districts or anything like that. I don't see that. I don't know that at this particular point that we would have the law and legality on our side to tell somebody, we've changed your district, you're no longer allowed to rent your house. So I'm hoping that we get a gentle market correction to downsize the rental market and allow for the folks that own investment properties to make more money, to be able to say, you know what, it's the first summer where I've seen houses that had to be booked in like April the year before sit vacant on the 4th of July. So I don't see any way that we can regulate our way out of it, and just hope that the market will be able to correct it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bynum, how should the town address short-term rentals and their impact on neighborhoods?
I actually asked that question when I decided to run. I sat down with Catherine and said, how do we know? How do we know how many short-term rentals we have? And I laughed at her answer. And then a couple days later, when I really thought about it, I was like, based on my experience on this island, she is probably right. She said most of the time when a new rental, especially in the Woodside, goes into the market, their neighbors will actually call and report them. based on the things that have happened in this town, I'm actually not shocked by that now when I've had some time to reflect on that. I would love to see some of our short-term come back into long-term rental. That is a desperate need we have on this island for the people who, you know, for whatever reason, can't buy a house, or for whatever reason they're choosing to not buy a house. We lost in 2020, I had friends that literally lost their rentals on the island because they realized at that point they could make more money as a short term than a long term. So I would love to see some of our short term rentals go back into long terms. And I think we are seeing that correction. I spoke with 2 rental agencies today and asked them, how was your summer? It was different. And I can tell you as a business owner, it was different. So I don't know if it's something we need to go looking for. I do think it's something that's going to just naturally happen through attrition at this point.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. McCulloch, how should the town address short-term rentals and their impact on neighborhoods?
It's a difficult question because legally, as Southport learned, our neighbor Southport learned, you can't legally force them to identify. So it's hard to know who it is, right? But there are other ways to address it through zoning and planning, ordinance and changes and potentially districts as was discussed. But I think that I think the reason we hear so much about this is because we have the issue of these rental properties being disruptive to people who live here, people who live beside these homes, who deal with this, who have to call the police. So I think that's something we have to address, is how to help make these short-term rentals not disruptive for our community. And then I totally agree with Chasey, and this was my comment as well. If there are a way that some of these short-term rentals could be converted into long-term rental, I think that's a great strategy for owners, as well as creating potentially some more affordable housing for people who work on the island.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Frazier, how should the town address short-term rentals and their impact on neighborhoods?
In my opening comment, I made one of my major points was balance. And this is certainly one of those areas where we need balance. And my point is, we're a family-friendly community. But how do you have rentals in a family-friendly community, short-term rentals in a family-friendly community? And what about the property rights of the individual? As Carrie was saying, we're restricted by state law in what we can do in terms of telling people what they must do with their property. So those are 2 really thorny issues that we have to address. But that said, it's important to understand something about rental properties. It has a negative connotation for residents. But the fact of the matter is, as Liz said earlier, we get $7 million in revenue in the accommodation tax. A good portion of that goes to actually it's more than that, a portion of that goes to our sand tax, $7 million worth. So the accommodation tax is not to be taken lightly. Accounting for the rentals, yes, it's a little squirrely the way we do it because the state restricts how we determine the use of a piece of property. I agree with Carrie in the sense that the real problem, I think, with short-term rentals is parking. The thing that you see along Beach, East Beach and West Beach during season is these McMansions, if you want to call it that, where there are 15 vehicles parked in the street, in the right-of-way, in the authorized parking locations.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Simmons, how should the town address short-term rentals and their impact on neighborhoods?
Well, we got to remember that there's approximately 2,000 managed short-term rental properties in the town of Oak Island. That's a fifth of the whole town. The majority of those, vast majority of those, are houses that are appraised at multi-million dollars in some cases. So the tax base that particular industry produces for the town is enormous. The accommodation tax, that's a good hit. But the property tax on those properties, that's a pretty good chunk of change too. Now, I agree, a lot of people are getting a little frustrated that the grocery stores get clogged up in the week of the 4th and such as that. And That's going to happen when you live in a town whose economy is based on visitors. I mean, that's all we got to offer is a strand of sand and some places for them to lay their head. And we do a pretty good job of milking them with that. Good at it. So anyway, you start meddling with rental properties, short-term rental properties, you might as well go to Vegas and start hounding them about gambling. You'll get the same response probably.
Thank you, sir. That's going to end the Q&A part of this evening's council candidate forum. We're going to give 2 minutes for each candidate to have a closing statement, maybe their vision for Oak Island in the next. You want to do 3? I was trying to get us out of here by 8 o'clock because I know the Eagles and the Giants are on. I don't want any fans to be mad at me.
We were
So
told
if you
three,
want to,
John.
if you want to do 3, we'll do 3. If you want to do 2, we'll do 2. I was thinking 2 will get everybody out of here
We'll do it.
and not have a massive drop in WECT News at 11 either. We'll do 2 minutes. If everybody is in agreement on 2 minutes. Okay, let's do 2. Try to get you out of here close to 8 o'clock. Since we did alphabetically the first time, we're going to do reverse alphabetically for the closing statements. That means candidate Scott Stevenson, you have 2 minutes, sir, for your close.
Again, thank you all for showing up tonight. When we moved here, what I loved was, I tell the story, we knew 3 people when we came here on our first vacation. 5 days later, we knew dozens of people because of this community and the sense of family that there is. I'm running in the hopes that we can continue to have those family values here on Oak Island. I'm running because I love the imperfections of Oak Island. That's one of the things that drew me here. We've got some very challenging times ahead of us. We've got some great plans. But one of the things that I wrote down, we've got great plans for the future, but we've got big needs in the present. We've got roads that need to be taken care of. We have water issues, as Casey mentioned, that need to be addressed. We can have all the plans in the world. We need to focus on the stuff that needs to be fixed today. And that's why I'm sitting up here tonight. I can't imagine living anyplace else. It's just not possible at this particular point. I want to be able to say in 4 years that this town council is able to provide a path by fixing the things that need to be fixed now, but provide a path so that when my children end up with our house, they're fighting over who's going to get the house so that they can live here on Oak Island. Thank you all again.
Thank you, sir. Next, for his closing statement this evening, we will go to Town Council candidate Reese Simmons. Mr. Simmons, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I brought my notes for this evening with me. We talked about growth of the town and it getting too big. Well, we're almost built out. We're about 80% plus built out. The island's only so big, so that's going to constrain us right there as far as growth. We've already got a height limit that can't be changed by like a sitting council at this point. We have a size limit. We cut out the special use permit for larger houses, so we've got a smaller house maximum now. The growth is under control. And in our system now, when we first started getting rental properties, before we had our sewer system, the county told you how many bedrooms you could have, your septic system. So they might get a test, say, okay, you can have 4 bedrooms. A bedroom has to have a closet for the inspector. Well, you had a house with 4 bedrooms, a sewing room, an office, and next thing you know, that 4-bedroom house became a 6 or 8 bedroom house, and then the rental thing just kind of exploded from there. But I tell you, the rental industry is the lifeblood of this town. We don't have anything. We don't have anything else to replace it with. So we're going to have to deal with it best we can. Control it the best we can, but deal with it. It's not going away.
Thank you, sir. Next, for her closing statement this evening, we will go to Town Council candidate Carrie McCulloch. Ms. McCulloch, 2 minutes, ma'am.
I'd like to thank the league for sponsoring this event. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight and those watching at home. You know, an educated voter is the backbone of our democracy. So thank you all for your interest in hearing what we have to say. A couple of things I care about, and I want to share that with you, and that is protecting and conserving our key resources. We have to build a sustainable economy, and that means we have to diversify the tax base. We got to preserve the quality of life that we all love here. And we have to have a more collaborative governing body. And I'm very much focused on that. My skills are best suited for this position because I have significant business experience, business education. I've been committed to community service here on the island, serving on various boards and committees. So I'm very familiar with the local issues. And I will always operate, you should know, I would always operate as a council member with kindness, respect, and with grace, and bring transparency and better communication between you and the governing body. Good intent, we all have it up here, right? But we have complex and costly issues to face. There are plans in place, but we need people with skills who can execute on those plans and not just put them on a shelf. I want to see and be a part of a unified town council. I want to see a more unified community. I want us to help find common ground for the greater good. It is one team, Team Oak Island.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, for his closing statement this evening, Town Council candidate Chip Frazier. Mr. Frazier, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to keep going with the issues. I think that's why you're here, and that's what I'm going to focus on in my closing comment. I have 6, and we've talked about most of them. Controlling development versus uncontrolled growth, traffic, safety, infrastructure. We talked about water, and we talked about sewer, stormwater. We talked about roads, protecting our buried utilities. We talked about the environment with the beach. We didn't talk about tree canopy, but that's certainly an important issue in maintaining our family-friendly environment. We need to work on Davis Canal, Montgomery Slough, and the marsh, make sure that those are viable ecosystems. Small business development, we've touched on a little bit, but the code repair program that's going on in the town will be important, and the streetscape plan is an important aspect of improving our small business community. We need affordable housing so that our small businesses have workforce that they can depend on rather than workforce that comes in from much further out. But I want to focus on 2 issues that we haven't touched on that are particularly sensitive to me. I have a safety background, and traffic really drives me crazy on Oak Island. And it's not that traffic is bad now. I worry about what's going to happen with traffic when the houses that have been approved by Brunswick are developed on the mainland. Where will those people go for recreation? There will be our visitors. They will come to our beach, and our traffic will get worse. If we don't get a handle on our traffic in a holistic sense, we need to look at cars. We need to look at pedestrians. We need to look at LSVs. We need to look at parking as a comprehensive plan. We have plans right now, but they're piecemeal, 1 or 2 at a time.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next, for her closing statement this evening, we will go to Town Council candidate Chasey Bynum. Ms. Bynum, 2 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you guys again for attending. It's an honor to sit here. It's an honor to live in a town where people take this election as serious as I believe we are I believe we are at a crossroads in our town. I believe I am just the candidate to take on the job. I am committed to the future of this town, not just for the next 10 years, not just for the next 20, but the next 40, 50, and beyond, because I believe that we are building a legacy on this island for my children to carry out that I will never see. I do believe that my husband's grandfather, Mr. Quick, came here with a dream. He was a butcher in a Kroger meat market, and he had a dream that he could have a beach house. We came here with a dream. I believe that dream is slipping away for many citizens on this island, and that concerns me. So the things that I will commit to, I will be honorable, I will be transparent, I will lead with integrity, I'll be a visionary, I'll be a forward thinker, I'll be solution oriented. I'm committed to the quality of life for our residents. It's something I really hold dear. I am concerned about the environmental maintenance that we have at hand. That includes so many things, not just our beaches, but like others have mentioned, our marshes and our waterways. If you know me, I love to be on my boat, so it's something that I am committed to taking care of. But I am very committed to being a citizens first government. I want to represent the citizens and know that they can trust me to be the person I say I'm going to be and be committed to making the hard choices for the citizens first. And that's the only way that we move forward. I would love to see us work as a united council and to really bring the morale back of this town. It's not in a great place right now, but I believe we can turn this around and be the happy beach town we're meant to be and not be the negative Nellies on Facebook any longer. So for that, I'm asking for your trust and your vote in November.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, for his closing statement this evening, Town Council candidate Tommy Brown. Mr. Brown, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. To touch on two topics we didn't mention, pedestrian safety. This will be a huge priority for me. And if not elected, I hope a huge priority for the next council. We need more sidewalks in this town. We need more crosswalks on this island. Every road, state maintained or town maintained, the speed limit needs to be reviewed. We need to educate people how to be safe walkers, how to be safe bikers. All of this will take action by this council as well as other stakeholders. Stormwater management. In the short term, we have infrastructure. You may not know that because it's overgrown. We need to ensure that the budget for our stormwater division, the budget for our public works department is at a point where they both have the equipment and the manpower to maintain what we have in place. Currently, I believe a lot of these resources are turning into flooding risks themselves. To go sort of ground floor, my approach to issues is straightforward, but I think it's important to walk through. One, always talk to residents. Candidate Tommy will be no different than council member Tommy. You won't see me one Tuesday every month. I will continue to be involved in this community, speaking to residents, hearing their ideas and hearing their thoughts. Second, working collaboratively with other council members. We need folks in council who value their independent ideas, but also understand the importance of collaborating and finding consensus. All at the end to find a balanced solution. And that's what I do every day as a lawyer. I work with my business stakeholders, find out their goals, find out their problems, work internally to give them strategies, and then negotiate with third parties if necessary. I believe we can find balance. There can be a balance between progress and preserving. We can maintain what we have in this town while also planning smartly for our future. If we fail to, our future will manage us, and we can't be in that position. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our town council candidates. A couple of things before we go, ladies and gentlemen. We do want to remind you that this forum, both of them, will be on the Town of Oak Island website. For those who couldn't make it tonight, you can share that information with them if you would. Make sure you go to vote411.org to find out all the information you need. And once again, thank you for taking an interest in your government and being here. Julia, I'll let you close it out.
Could we give a round of applause to John for coming down here and acting as our moderator?
I heard you say it before. Please, thank you very much. Scott, thank you.